Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to this third session of economy in our N100 series. In this series, we are discussing all the topics which have the probability of being asked in the mains exam from mains perspective. So we go into the detail of every topic. I provide you various data sets that can be used. I provide you various dimensions in which you can think and you can structure your answers, the dimension that can be asked. Okay. uh, Before this, we have already completed the polity section, so you can go to the playlist. There is an N100 playlist on our YouTube channel. On that playlist, you can watch all the videos which have been covered for the polity and the earlier videos of the economy as well. So let's start today's class. Today class, I'm going to cover employment. Although the name of the topic is employment, but we mostly discuss about unemployment. What are different types of unemployment? We will also discuss about the informal unemployment, or rather informal employment. Then the issue of a skill that is there. In earlier classes also I have told you that in India the skill development is at very poor states. So all these topics I shall discuss in today's class. So let's start with the first thing first. When we call unemployment, what exactly do we understand? Is it like the person is not having the government job? Like in the normal uh, language, what we say that yes, I am still preparing for the exam, I am unemployed. Or even those people who are working somewhere in the private sector, like for the time being, they also declare themselves as unemployed. Is that the case? The answer is no. Like, see, the way government calculates data, or the way economists understand unemployment, like this is the data. I will just, I mean, do not note down this number because they are slightly old. They are the data with respect to financial year 2020 and 21. But the terms which are there, one is unemployment rate, another is labor force participation rate. So first we need to understand the difference between these terms. So unemployment is, or rather first let's understand labor force participation rate. Labor force participation rate means, see, overall this is our population, but in this population a lot many people are above 60 years old. They are now retired, they cannot work. A lot many are still children, those who have to study, like less than 15 years of age. So this set cannot work, the children and old age people. So we have a subset of this, maybe, like this is the subset which is of working age population, which can work, which is expected to be employed. We cannot expect the children to be employed. In fact, the law prohibits it. We cannot expect the old age people to be employed either. So out of this working age population, not everyone is looking for the job. Some might be looking for the job, some might not be looking for the job. Okay. Because see, a lot many people might be still studying in the colleges. They are earning degrees. I mean, by the age of 22, 23, people graduate. So these are the set of people, and after graduation also there are few people who are like want to go for the further studies, but to prepare, they might not be looking for the job. So out of these people, certain percentage are looking for job. Okay. This is called labor force participation rate. That how much of the working population is willing to work. This is called labor force participation rate. Like this is the labor force available to work. So suppose let's take a hypothetical example. The total population is 100. Out of these, the total population is 100. Ugh. Total population is 100. Out of 100 people, suppose old age and children, they constitute around 40 people. So now there are only 60 people who are in the working age group. Out of these 60, suppose 25 people are not interested in working. So how many are interested in working? The simple mathematics, 60 minus 25, that is 35 people are interested in working. Okay, so here it will give us the labor force participation rate is equal to 35 divided by total. Total 60 people were there who were eligible to work. Out of the 60, only 35 are interested in doing the job. These only 35 people, they will contribute to the economy. The rest will not contribute to the economy. They are not willing to work. This will give us labor force participation rate. But well, not all these 35 people who are looking for the work will get the job. It may happen that at any particular time, only 30 people have got the job. This is called unemployment. So, unemployment is that out of the people who were looking for the job, how many were not getting the job? When we discuss about the unemployment rate, we discuss about that how many people did not get job as percentage of those who were looking for the job. So suppose out of these 35 people, 5% did not get the job. So 5 divided by 35 into 100 is going to be the unemployment rate. So unemployment rate is never reflected as percentage of total population. It is always reflected as percentage of labor force. Labor force means those who are willing and able to work. I hope this is clear. The conceptual clarity is first thing that is required. The next thing is also like, see, there will be a situation where sometimes, because not everyone will get the government job, not everyone would be in regular employment. So it so happens that few people get job throughout the year, like regular employment, government job. If you become IS, you will be employed till the age of 60. But then there are few people who are not in regular employment. Some days they will get job, on some days they may not get the job, like those working as labor, those who are working as gig employee, freelancers. They do not have the job available all the time. So how are you going to count if they are employed or unemployed? For that purposes, there are three approaches which are used. The first is usual status approach. So, I mean, when a surveyor goes to conduct this survey, the question that he asks is whether out of the 365 days, out of the last 1 year, he was employed for major part of the time. Matlab means half or more. If he is employed for more than half of the 1 year period of time, it would be said that he is employed. Okay. Next is weekly status approach. Probably you may not be able to correctly recall the whole complete year, how many months you were employed or unemployed. So in weekly status, a person has to be gainfully employed for an hour on any day in the preceding week. So when the survey was conducted, the week preceding to that survey, in that week, if he has got job for even an hour, he would be considered employed. Not necessary that he should get job for all 7 days in the preceding week. Okay. Next is daily status approach. When unemployment is measured for each day in the preceding week. Okay, so as the name suggests, in daily status, each day we count that whether this reflects us that if a person this in these two approaches, the outcome is only how much is unemployed and how much is employed. Where this approach, the daily status approach, also tells us the extent of underemployment. Like a person was available to work for all the six out of 7 days. Whether he got job or only 5 days, only 4 days, 3 days, this is also reflected in daily status approach. Most of the data that government presents or the data that I shall be giving would be based on usual status. Although the data the government presents, the government reports both usual status and weekly status data, but for our simplified discussion, we would be relying on usual status based data. Okay, the last slide, the data that I was showing you was also based on usual status. But before looking at the data, what is the status of our economy, let's first also understand the different type of unemployment. It has been asked once by UPSC. So we should have conceptual clarity about the type of employment also. This is very often asked in prelims. Obviously, it is important for prelims, but it can be asked in mains exam as well. Okay. So first thing is disguised unemployment. By definition, it is like when the additional person employed is not leading to increase in productivity. It is called disguised unemployment. Suppose in a factory, two laborers are working, they might be producing say 10 unit of any produce. Suppose they are making bicycle. So two labor are working, they are able to produce 10 unit of bicycle every week. Okay. Now if we employ another person, say third person, would production increase or not? Definitely there would be increase. The production would be probably around 17 or 16. So additional person is leading to additional production. There is increase in productivity or production. But if it is not happening, suppose two person employed were also producing 10 unit of bicycles, and if we employ the third person then also 10 unit, if we employ the fourth person then also 10 unit, so in that case we would say that probably these two additional people were unemployed. They are unemployed. This is called disguised unemployment because on paper, on face, they are looking employed, but practically from economy perspective, their employment is not increasing the productivity or production in the economy. That's why we will say that they are disguised unemployed. Okay, a lot many students make the mistake that they say that disguised employment. No, there is no such thing like disguised employment. This is type of unemployment. This is disguised unemployment. Okay, the definition is simple. When additional person employed does not lead to increase in production, and this is very common in agriculture. Our agriculture sector is employing approximately 46% of labor force, whereas its contribution to GDP is only approximately 15%. This disproportionate engagement in agriculture is a symptom of disguised unemployment, where the work could have been completed by say uh, these four people, two people are also working in the same field, not contributing or not leading to any increment in productivity or production. Okay. Next is, if you have any doubt with respect to any type of unemployment, then you must ask your doubt. Conceptual clarity is very important. Next is a structural unemployment. One more thing, the unemployment data that I will produce or that the government produce, like the government data does not reflect this kind of unemployment. In the government data, all these people are counted as employed only. So this is only a qualitative analysis will produce what is disguised unemployment. The quantitative wise they are employed. Okay. Next is a structural unemployment. A structural employment is when the nature or the structure of economy changes. It often happens because of technological changes. The name suggests a structural unemployment. So, structurally the nature of job available or the skills available, I mean the job, the skills that are required in the job, now that has changed. So, it changes because of the technological changes or people's preference. Sometimes it will happen that people's taste or preference will change, because of which also there could be some structural unemployment. For example, earlier there used to be CD player. So those people who were involved or they were having the skills of say producing CD player or maintenance of CD player, production of compact discs. Now that CD player is no more in use in the economy, those skills are redundant. They are no more required. Probably the people having those skills will not get the job anymore. So that's the example of a structural employment. So because of the technological changes, technological advancement, this kind of unemployment is very common. Now another question is asked that why do India witnesses very high level of structural unemployment? Can you guess me? Can you give me the answer? India is peculiarly having a lot of structural unemployment. Try to answer something, anything that comes to your mind. See, structural unemployment is also a symptom of a skill mismatch. A skill mismatch between the employer, the requisition of skills required in the economy, and the skill possessed by the people. So, this is a very common thing. For example, India is doing very good in IT sector. But most of our engineering colleges are still producing mostly civil engineer, mechanical engineer, chemical engineer. So what like these companies like TCS, Infosys, what they are doing, they are recruiting people in the bulk, engineers in the bulk, and then they are training them, they are teaching them coding languages, etc. And then they are being sent to the work. So there is a skill mismatch between the skill required in the job and the skills available with the graduates, engineering graduate. That is not a desirable thing. See, few people are lucky that they are being recruited by good companies like TCS, Infosys, and they are trained and they are put to work. But obviously, this mismatch leads to a lot of educated unemployed people. Even the like another reason is that a lot of our engineering colleges, etc., they are not updating their curriculum. There are other problems also with respect to skills. A lot of our degrees, etc., are not tuned with the requirement. Like a lot many people are doing graduation in various social science subjects, and these social science subjects curriculum is not tuned with making them ready for do any job in the economy. So they are not job ready graduation subjects that makes you ready to do any kind of job. If you are not doing any kind of job, ultimately there is a skill mismatch. This is a structural unemployment. So a structural unemployment, do not understand that earlier he was employed and because of the change in technology, a person has become unemployed. A structural unemployment is also because whatever a skill that you are possessing and the skill which is required in the economy, there is a mismatch between the two. then you are saying that you are structurally unemployed. Okay, you cannot do the job which is available. Next is seasonal unemployment. Before moving further, all of you who are online, please like the video and share it with your friends. Let them be aware that these classes are happening on YouTube free of cost. Complete syllabus would be covered so that everyone takes advantage of this. Okay, and do join the live class and do contribute in the class, give answers to my questions. Then only your learning would be complete. Okay, next is seasonal unemployment. It also happens that this is again witnessed in agriculture more prominently. What will happen that India is having monsoon kind of climate, most of the India, and in the monsoon season agricultural work will happen. A lot many people will get the employment, but post monsoon season when agricultural work stops, these agricultural workers, they become unemployed. This is similar is with respect to a lot many industries that have seasonal demand. For example, firecracker industry, it usually have high demand near the Diwali, but the demand is not the same for the rest of the year. So a lot of employment comes uh, before Diwali, but a lot of laborers are retrenched after that. So such industries which have seasonal demand, or agriculture mainly which have seasonal production, they witness seasonal unemployment. So there is employment for a part of the year. Employment is available in few months of the year, not available for the rest of the year. That is called seasonal unemployment. Another kind of unemployment is because of the business cycle. So before uh, telling you the kind of unemployment it is, this is called cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is because of the cyclical nature of the business cycle. This is the business cycle, usual business cycle. Okay, obviously this is a bit simplified version of the usual business cycle, and this is not cycle, this is sine wave, but we call it cycle because see, after this period, first there would be a phase of expansion. The expansion will reach a maximum growth will happen, and from there would be contraction in the economy. Then at some point of time, economy will hit the bottom, which is called trough, and from there it will again start the recovery. This cycle is repeated in every businesses, and I'm not only I'm saying businesses, we since we are talking macroeconomy, like every economy, every country witnesses this. And see, as such, do not consider that this is zero. It may happen that this is say 5% growth rate. So economic growth rate will go above 5% rate, maybe it will go to 7% growth rate, and then it will start coming down. It will again go at some point of time, it will reach say 3.5% rate, and then it will go high. So for a country like India, we usually do not witness the negative growth rate, but still it always happens that growth would be sometimes higher, and then there would be slowdown. This contraction is also called as slowdown, slowing of the economy. This is something you must have witnessed if you have been following the newspaper for last 2-3 years. Then you must have witnessed that economy grows. It like last year we had 8% growth rate, 8.2%. This year we are expecting only 7.2%. So there is a slowdown. If it goes further, it would be confirmed that we are in this phase. But this phase will also not going to be there forever. So because of the cyclical nature of the economic growth, there would be unemployment in this contraction phase. In this contraction phase, when economy will go through slowdown, there would be layoff. This is called cyclical unemployment. No one has done anything wrong. You were having the skills which were getting job. These are the skills which are still relevant in the economy. But still, since economy cannot, since the growth has slowed down, not everyone can be employed. Businesses, few of the businesses are failing. They are going out of the business. Those employee will become unemployed. Okay, so this is unemployment, which is natural kind of thing. It happens without any fault of anyone's, and this is also something which is not witnessed in government. That's why people love the government job. Why? Because in government job there is no cyclical unemployment. Even if there is recession, the government employee's job is secured. But those in the private sector, they are very much vulnerable to this cyclical unemployment cycle. Like when the recession will come, and recession will come every decade, or say at the gap of 10-15 years, there would be slowdown, there would be recession, there would be layoffs. Even if you are in Google, there are chances that you would be fired. Next is frictional unemployment. This is called something a good kind of employment. Like not all, there is a this ad na कुछ दाग अच्छे हैं. So similarly, there are few unemployment which is also considered good, and the one is frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is unemployment in the interim period, when to go for a better opportunity, a person become unemployed in the transition phase. For example, a lot many of you might have left your previous job to prepare for the civil services. Okay, so in this transition period, when you are willing to join the civil services, when you have left the earlier job, you are unemployed. But this is called frictional unemployment. Why am I saying that this is good? This is good because it shows that better opportunities are available in the economy. It reflects the positive outlook about economy. Like people are optimistic that there are better jobs available, they can get those jobs. So this is a kind of voluntary unemployment. Like in cyclical unemployment, seasonal unemployment, structural unemployment, this was not voluntary, it was involuntary. The people are interested in working, but still they have been laid off. Whereas frictional unemployment is a kind of voluntary unemployment. That's why it is considered good. Every economist should have some amount. I'm saying it's not that everyone is leaving all their job and they are coming to prepare for civil services. That may not be a good scenario, because that will also reflect that probably there is some push factor as well. Only pull factor is not at play. People are not able to work or not willing to work. There is something wrong with the way private sector is operating, so everyone is pushed away from the private sector. That's not, if the pull factor is there, it means that there are better jobs available, there is optimistic outlook of the economy, and that is good. Okay, that is called frictional unemployment. Is there any doubt with respect to any kind of this employment? Please ask. No. Then it's turn, after understanding the qualitative type of unemployment, it's turn to look at some of the data. This is the data. I mean, we cannot memorize all the data, but we would remember in comparative terms the data with respect to 2017-18. So like in last 6 years time, how much things have changed. This is about labor force participation rate. Okay, and although it is not clear, but obviously you must have understood by now that labor force participation rate, this is pink for women, this is for men, and this is the average person. So on an average, you can see that the labor force participation rate of our country has gone up. It was 50.7% in 2017-18 and it has come up to 63.7. Okay. Overall, you can also understand that only around two-thirds of total working age population is interested in doing a job. Not everyone is interested in doing the job. Earlier, like in 2017-18, only one out of the two adult was interested in doing the job. Now the situation has slightly improved and this is a good sign. How has it improved? From where the extra workforce is coming? It is mainly coming from women. The women labor force participation rate was abysmally low. Earlier, it was only at around 25%. Now the situation has improved a lot. It has moved around 48%. So in recent, especially in like say last 4 years or so, the female labor force participation rate has seen remarkable recovery, and this is a good sign. Okay, so a lot many women are now interested in working. With respect to men, it has always been high. It has been around 76 or so, but even the male labor force participation rate has increased now. Now it is 80%. So for, I mean, it is societal constraint also. This is societal issue also. Our society expects male to work, whereas it does not expect, or rather it expects women to take care of the children, to take care of the household. So that societal norm is reflected in data as well. The data is there. So this is something that you can use in society answer also, that for female labor force participation rate is good around 33 percentage point less than the male labor force participation rate. And this poor female labor force participation rate is taking down our overall labor force participation rate. What's the problem with low labor force participation rate? It is simply that if less people are available to work, how are we going to grow? I mean, as India has to yesterday only we saw that we have to become a developed nation by 2047. So to be a developed nation by 2047, there has to be more and more output by every person. And every person means if 100% of the available workforce is working, then definitely there would be more output. So desired outcome is that more labor force participation rate is better. Why? Because it will increase the production. Increased production will lead to higher economic growth. Clear? Next, this is the unemployment related data. Again, there is something very interesting here. This is like rural, urban and national average. So first let's look at the national average. Here you can see that unemployment rate incidentally in 2020-34 is at 3.2%, and this is like a data by periodic labor force survey. PLFS data is there, whatever I am showing you. So only 3% people are unemployed. This is what the government is saying. People have got the job. There is no issue of unemployment in our country. 3% is very less. Out of the 100 people, only 3 are unemployed. And how is it measured? This is measured using usual status. Here one more pattern that you can see. I mean, this pattern kind of questions are asked in mostly prelims, but a pattern that you can see is that the female unemployment overall is always less than male unemployment. So this should not give you a picture that female are more engaged in work. So less unemployment does not mean more employment. Okay, why? Because the base here is not total female working age population. The base here is only the female interested in working, only female which are in the labor force. And as we have already said that only 48% of female are there in the labor force. They are only 48% women are willing to work. Okay, so that's why because of the lower base, the unemployment rate is also always overall, if it is seen, it is less for female as compared to male. This year only, like in 2023-24, it is same for both male as well as female. And here if you look at that, in urban areas, the female unemployment is more than male unemployment. Whereas in rural areas, the female unemployment is less than male unemployment. So the less unemployment that we are seeing here is because of a phenomena which is known as feminization of agriculture. In agriculture, more and more women are now getting employed. So in rural areas, there are less women which are unemployed. More men are unemployed because men are looking for non-agricultural work in rural areas. And more women are looking for agricultural work. Okay. Whereas in urban areas, women are finding it difficult. So the nature of job available in urban areas are more suitable to male. The jobs which are suitable for, which is called pink jobs, which are suitable for women, they are less available in urban areas. Okay, so one suggestion that you give if a question comes about why less women are engaged or in labor force, you can see that in urban areas specifically, the nature of job available is not suitable for women, and that's why a lot of women unemployment is higher in urban area. At one point of time, it was more than 10%. The gap was around 4% or so. This gap has now reduced a bit, but still it is around 3% or 2.5%. Okay, is there any doubt with respect to this data, this graph, etc.? Pattern you have to remember, and then you have to remember this data. Rest of the things you may not remember. That would be fine. If you remember the pattern, you can draw the rough sketch as well. That is starting from somewhere around 7, it has been reducing, or even like this, that starting from somewhere around 7.5, sorry, 5.5, or average was starting from 6%, it has reduced to 3.2%. Only these 2 points you have to remember, that unemployment has been reducing in recent time. So this is clear that probably the problem in our country is not of unemployment. The problem is because of the nature of job available in our country. Okay, it is not the job per se which is the problem, which is also the like Niti Aayog says that the problem is not of unemployment, rather the problem is that of underemployment. That whatever job that you are doing, people are not happy with the job. And this is something that I see. All my friends, etc., if I talk to anyone who is working in India, those who have left India, they are relatively happier. No one is happy with the job. In whatever sector a person is, even those who have managed to clear civil services, they're also not very happy. So the nature of job that people are getting, this is the problem. And one of the biggest problem is informalization of job, informal employment. Okay. What kind of job you say that this is informal? And in previous classes also I have discussed about informal employment. Do you remember the data that I provided to you? about informal employment. What kind of job you call as this is an informal employment? So this is a very much debated thing. What is formal and what is informal? And the jury is still out as to what you call as informal and what is called as formal. Like in last class, I have given you an example that SBI is not now saying there is a report by SBI which says that the informal sector has shrunk, and they have counted that all those who are taking payment, all the businesses which are taking payment using UPI or some digital method in their bank account, they should be considered as some kind of formalized. Okay. But when we are considering employment, probably that is not the right yardstick to consider the nature of job as formal or informal. So the correct yardstick would be that the jobs where you get the social security. So that kind of jobs which operate outside of formal labor regulations, which lack social security benefits and do not adhere to labor laws. So where labor laws are not applicable, where social security is not available. For example, there are a lot of kirana shops must be there in your neighborhood, and those people who are working in those kirana shops, they do not get any PF etc. There is no insurance available on job. Whereas, like if you join civil services, you will get pension. There would be medical insurance to you as well as your children, your dependent people. So these are called social security benefits. So if these are the things which are available to a job, which are attached to a job, we call that as formal job. If these things are not there, we call it as informal jobs. And as I have told you in the last class, that in India, approximately 90% people are engaged in informal job. 90% people, and this is something which is corroborated by ILO as well. That the informal nature of job, the majority of the, and this is not only true for India. For India, it is like 90%, but the world over in all the developing country, this is the nature of employment which is available. Why we have so much of jobs that are informal in nature? That also the question that should be that should ring in your mind. So see, when a such question is asked, you should think from two perspectives. One is the perspective of the employer who is giving the job, and another is the perspective of the person who is taking such kind of job. First thing is that only those kind of jobs are available. So why an employer wants to give an informal employment? And the second thing is why an employee is willing to take that kind of job. Okay. There are few points from both side as well. First, let's think from the employee perspective. There is high level of poverty. Because of the high level of poverty, people are willing to engage in these kind of jobs. Second is that these jobs, which are like informal jobs, they require low skill. And since the skill available with Indian population is low, they provide easy entry. So because of the poverty, you want to get into job, you do not have the skill, so you get into some kind of informal job using less of your skills. Okay. That now, if we look from the employer's perspective, why is employer creating that kind of job? The one thing is that to reduce cost, the informal workers are paid less than the formal worker. there is no payment like towards the PF deduction and all those things. So all those costs are saved. Second is that to avoid labor laws. If you become a formal employment, if you start giving formal employment, you have to abide by a lot of labor regulations, and the companies in India wants to avoid this labor regulation because of the obvious reason, because of the very reason why you want to be a government employee, because you want to have a baton in your hand, danda. So since you want to use it, there are other who do not want to be used against them, so they try to be outside the labor laws network. Okay, so these are the reason causes because of which informal employment exists in our country. And then another important factor is agrarian economy, and especially because our agrarian economy is of subsistence type, there is low level of mechanization. Agrarian economy is by nature informal. Agriculture is like a lot many people are doing agriculture on their own land, so those self-employed people are definitely going to be outside the formal employment network. Okay, next is, so what's the problem? This is an obvious question, although like there are a lot many problems. I would expect that that a lot many points must have come to your mind, but let's jot them down at one places. That what's the problem? The problem is, first, the problem is with the person who is engaged in that kind of employment is in trouble. Second, the problem is with his children also. This is something which was in news last year. There was an ILO report which says that the children of those employed in informal nature of work do not have bright prospect. And third is the problem also to the overall economy. It is not in the interest of overall economy either. Let's see what are the problems. First is that it is obvious they do not have the adequate social protection arrangements, and because of the lack of social protection arrangement, and they often, very often, they will slip to poverty. So what will happen to the old age? Who will take care of them? They do not have enough money. So there is a lot of misery to them during old age. They are dependent on other people as compared to those people who are in the government job, who retire from the government job. They get a lot of money on superannuation, first thing. After that, they also get regular pension. So their children, they do a lot of take care of them. Whereas those who retire from the informal nature of work, they are considered as burden. Their family members do not take due care of them. Exceptions are there, but I am talking of the pattern. Okay, another thing is that the wages are also less because they are outside the labor laws protection. Sometimes they are not even given the minimum wages. Because of these reasons, there is high level of poverty, and it leads to inequality, and poverty and inequality is also linked to lack of inclusive development. So one of the reason of lack of inclusive development or inclusive growth is informal nature of employment in our country. Then there are more occupational risks, since like the safety laws etc. are not implemented. These people often do not have the required safety gears. The safety measures are not available at the workplace. Then, since there is no pay slip either, there is no record of the salary that they are getting. Because of this reason, it is difficult for them to access institutional credit. Whatever be the money, whatever is their purchasing power, even in that proportion, they are not able to access credit. So the credit available to them is at very high rate. The institutional credit is at relatively low interest rate. So they access credit at high interest rate. and because of high interest rate, they often default, or rather what you can say that they cannot start their own venture. Okay. Because of the high interest rate credit or lack of institutional credit, they can't start their own enterprise even if they want. They can't venture into the new things because of the lack of resources. So ultimately this leads to a vicious cycle. Once you are in an informal employment, you will not even get the job to start the new job. You do not have the resources, you remain in poverty forever. And the forever includes even your children. This is what ILO report is saying, that the children inherit the vulnerabilities. This vulnerability, the ILO report is talking that this vulnerability is of four types. You may not remember it exactly, but you can understand it. That first is that there would be disparity in school education. The children of those working in formal sector, their schooling is definitely not on par with those who are working in formal sector. It is obvious. Those who are working, those who are getting more payment, more salaries, etc., they will be able to give their children better job, better education. In fact, the parenting time and resources that are spent on the children education, parenting time and resource devoted to overall child care, you can say, towards child, is also less. So not only the money, even the time available in, because there are long working hours in informal sector, there is no limit. The employer try to squeeze as much as possible. Then there are issues also because these people often get directly exposed to the informal work. Direct exposure to informal work. Very often it happens that like it is the children of those who are working in the field who get engaged as child labor. They start going with their parents. Those who are working in the formal, their children will first go and do schooling, then they will go and complete and get a graduation degree, and all those things will happen. And another vulnerability is that there is longer transition period between a school and job. What does it mean? It means that when like they complete their schooling, when they go for the job, they find it difficult to get a job. This is also because to get a job in India or in any other country, like your reference does a lot of good. If you do not have good references, you will find it very difficult to get a job. So accordingly, the transition period is relatively higher when a person transitions from the school to job. Okay, and in to sum it up, it can be said the share of NEET is higher among those from informal household. What is NEET? Those who are giving NEET exam? No. NEET stands for not in employment, education or training. So not in employment, education or training. So a person who is adult, it is sort of kind of unemployed. He has completed his education, he is not taking any kind of training, and he is not in the job as well. So these kind of people are higher. So many people remain unemployed or remain out of the labor force even those who are children of the formal household, but usually because they are still pursuing the education, higher education, probably because they are looking for some kind of training. But in case of the informal households, they often are categorized as need person. Okay. Then the next aspect is that it is not good for economy either. Why am I saying not good for economy? See, yesterday I told you that inequality is the prime reason why we are saying that India may remain in middle income trap. The same point you can write here. I have already said that this will breed inequality and poverty, and inequality and poverty is overall has the potential to keep India in middle income trap, MIT. And one more thing which is directly with respect to the informal job is that these jobs have less productivity as compared to formal job. An important reason is because you do not give training to them. You must have seen that those workers who are working in a say a smart bazaar, and those who are working on normal kirana shop, those working in the smart bazaar are trained. They relatively work fast. With the same number of employees, smart bazaar's turnover is much more than the turnover of any normal shop. Okay, why? Because worker one thing is also not because of the training only. One thing is obviously the workers are trained over there, they are more skilled, also because there is use of technology. So wherever the nature of work is formal, there is higher use of technology, the productivity is higher, whereas in informal employment, the productivity is less. If the productivity is less, even our production would be more costly. And if our production is costly, it would be less competitive in international market. If it is less competitive in international market, it will lead to less export and more import. So this is another problem that we have to tackle. Then another thing is that more informal sector also leads to less tax collection. In India, all these informal businesses, they hardly pay tax. If their turnover is like, if their revenue is of 100 crore, they will pay tax for 5 crore. Not even 80 crore. So they do not save taxes. They just they simply do some favor to the government by depositing some amount. Okay, some penny amount should be given to the government also. So that's why the government is worried that there should be less of informalization. So government has taken some initiative to reduce the informalization. What initiative has government taken? Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan Yojana. So this is a kind of pension scheme, contributory pension scheme for those who are employed in informal sector. Then there is code on social security to cover the gig workers also. So earlier the labor laws were not covering the gig workers or informal workers, but this code on social security, it covers gig workers and informal sector. So the effort is being made by the government to provide social security benefits to those who are working in informal sector. Then there are various skill development initiatives, Skill India initiative, uh, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Kausal Yojana. So these initiatives are there to boost the skill available to the people. If they possess the higher skills, there are chances that they will get employment in formal sector. Okay, if you have any doubt, please ask. Next, we are going to discuss the labor laws reforms. Here, the code that I was talking about, this is another important thing. A question has been asked this year on the labor law reforms as well. Okay, so let's see what has been the labor law reforms. So there were earlier a lot of codes, like 29 labor laws were there, 29 different laws were there which were dealing with the issues related to labor's industries, etc. Now the government said that these 29 codes are creating a lot of confusion and it is very cumbersome for the companies to comply with all these regulations. Like even if you comply with one, you might be, even if you comply with 20, you might not be complying with the 9. So that's why the government said that probably we need to consolidate them. We need to make them comprehensively at one place. So these various 29 laws were compiled into 4 codes. Okay, so see, all the laws which were there earlier, they are more or less there in new system as well. But it's such that rather than they being segregated in different places under with various acts, those earlier acts have been repealed and they have been comprehensively compiled into these 4 codes. Obviously, some provisions have also been changed or some new provisions have also been added. Okay, so let's see what are these codes. So first thing, what when you go for the job, what you look at? You look at that there should be wages. So first is code on wages. This talks about the minimum wages. But apart from minimum wages, a new concept of floor wage have been introduced. And this would be set up by the central government. And this would be region specific. It would vary from region to region. So central government will set up the floor wages which will vary from place to place, and minimum wages can be set up by the central government or a state government. So central or state both can set up, and this will be varying, obviously region by region it will vary, but it would also varies from industry to industry. So it would be industry specific. Like if it is more hazardous industry, probably the wages should be more. And obviously the minimum wages should be more than the floor wages. There is also a concept of national minimum wage that have been introduced, which will be set by the central government. So central government will set that this is the national minimum wage below which you will not give, but then a state government will set up minimum wages for respective industry in their state. Okay. Next is, after you get the job, you talk about the salary, then you talk about the working condition, what kind of work you have to do. That is regulated by code on occupational safety, health and working condition. Probably you may not like the job which involves a lot of physical work or which involves a lot of risk. And if there is a lot of risk when you are dealing with the poisonous gases, when you have probably you are engaged in mining activity, you should be provided the safety gears. So these things are regulated, like what are the hazardous industries, and such kind of regulations are regulated by this code on occupational safety, health and working condition. Now, earlier there was the ruling that in hazardous industries, women uh, could not be, I mean, women could not be employed during night, or like for there were some restrictions on employment of women. Now, the new code says that women can be employed in all industries 24/7, provided suitable arrangements are made. Obviously, suitable safety arrangements you have to make. You cannot ask the women to take the public bus in the night because public bus would not be available. So you will have to make arrangements for their transportation, etc. So, or I mean, whatever be the relevant safety arrangements that has to be done for the woman, it's to be made by the employer, but there is no restriction on the part of the government on employment of women in night. This is a welcome sign. Then the next is code on social security we have been talking about. Now this code on social security has for the first time included the informal sector. It has also included the gig workers, gig and platform workers. It also talks of mandatory maternity benefit. So it not only deals with say PF, it also deals with maternity benefit and insurance. Then code on industrial relations. What happens if you are not provided these things? If you are not provided minimum wages, what will you do? If you go and talk to your employer will simply fire you. So there has to be some mechanism to safeguard the interest because there is a power asymmetry between employer and employee. To deal with this power asymmetry, employees can form a union. They can collectively bargain. United you stand, divided you fall. So this code on industrial relation talks about union formation. This has made a very important uh, provision that, like, the problem which is there and which is being witnessed, that there is too much of unionization. Now this is a problem from both the sides. The first is that those who are the industries have to deal with so many unions, like if they are hiring 10,000 employees, and if there are 10 different unions having 1,000 employees, it is difficult to deal with. Like if you agree with the demands of one union, the other union will go on a strike, and there are vested interests of various union leaders also that come into play. So because of these reasons, it has made a provision that negotiating authority would be only within union which has more than 51% membership. So a union which doesn't represent the more than 51% members, it will not have the negotiating authority. It cannot negotiate with the management. This code for the first time also covered the fixed term employment. Fixed term employed, they can also be a part of this union. Fixed term employment is what we commonly understand as contractual employment. So on contract, if certain person are employed, they are considered as fixed term employed for 1 month or 2 months or 1 year or 2 year. There is an employment. So see, this code as such industrial relation means relation between worker and industries. This deal with the matters related to say union and also a strike, etc. Okay. This also says that if you're those who are in the management position or those who are in say having salary more than 18,000, they cannot form the union. So union can be formed only by the employee being paid less than 18,000 or those who are not in the management position. Okay. But well, this is not hard and fast. In a lot many organizations, you must have seen that even those who are in the management position, like bankers, employer, bankers association, so they give their name as association, not union. Okay, a small distinctions is there between union and association. Association can be formed by anyone. They are simply a group of people. It is protected by our constitution to form the association. Whereas to form the union, you are like union can go on strike, etc. That is not something which is given to those who are in the management position. That's why in a lot of IT sector, etc., you must have seen that everyone is said manager, assistant manager, deputy manager. Your salary is 10,000, 20,000, but you are assistant manager, you are deputy manager, you are manager, senior manager, junior manager. So why? Because once you are called manager, then the company, a lot of labor laws are not applicable. You cannot go on a strike, etc. So that's the benefit because of which the companies are adopting these practices. Okay. Next, the question can be asked: what's the merit and demerit of these labor laws reforms? Floor wage, minimum wage, all those things. Okay, one important aspect which is there, which is part of code on industrial relation, is that now a company having less than 300 employees can fire an employee without prior government permission. So if a company is having more than 300 employee, if he wants to fire an employee, he must take prior permission of the governments. That's why in a lot of large companies in India, like firing is considered very difficult. And you must have seen that in the news that the companies keep on demanding that we should be given the right to hire and fire. When we are doing good, we should be allowed to hire. I mean, it is definitely allowed, but when we are not doing so good, we are not requiring the people, we should be allowed to fire them. And this is something which is not easy in our country. To fire, you need the prior permission of the government. When it matter goes to the government, obviously it's a time taking process. There would be bribe, kickbacks, investigation, a lot many things will happen. So companies prefer not to fire. Rather, what they will do, like when I was in uh, Reliance Industries Limited, there was this perception that this is akin to government job. I mean, it would be very difficult to get fired unless like the factory is shut down or something like that. But obviously there would be some non-performer, or there would be few people who will get into fight with their boss. The boss might like to fire you when you are non-performer, or when you are not, when you are going against him. They can't. So what they do, they will not give you incentive. they will not increase, I mean, uh, your salary much. Your increment would be 0%, 5% or so, very less. Then you will naturally find another job and then you will move to that job. So these are the practices which are used rather than terminating the employment of any person. This is something that the companies have learned in our country. Then next thing, the question can be asked, what are the merits of these laws? One thing is that they have simplified. There were 29 laws, now they have simplified it to 4. And then a lot many laws are now going to be uniform across the states. So this is also going, like the companies which are having operations in multiple states in our country, they will not have to bother about different laws in different countries, different states. Okay, and there is this is the motto of these labor law reforms, that one labor return, one license and one registration policy. You do not have to file, if you are a businessman, you do not have to worry about a lot of returns related to labor laws. There should be one return for one license and one registration. Then the app inspection has been made web based and it would be random. Earlier what used to be there, that every inspector used to be allotted certain area. So because of that person, the inspector used to be named, like, yes, I can clear your files, I can slap certain charges against you. Now what has been done is that the inspection would be allotted on random basis by the website, by the system. So you may not be the one who would be inspecting him the next time. So it has the potential to reduce the inspector raj. This has worked very well in income tax. Like in income tax, something called faceless assessment has been started. So it will happen that someone working in Nagpur is going to be assessed by someone who is by an inspector who is sitting in Delhi. So in this case, the issue of kickbacks, bribes, etc. goes down. This is good for both. The go, government also witnesses a lot of loss of revenue because of these kickbacks. Obviously, if someone is giving 100 rupees as bribe only to save 500 in taxes, so it was leading to a lot of tax evasion. And also there were a lot of businessmen also who were being harassed so that some bribe could be taken from them. So this is good, this has worked very well. The same is tried in labor inspection also. Next is that the concept of national minimum wage is also a good concept, that probably India is setting up, trying to at the national level, what is going to be our national wage. Obviously, it also had some lacuna in the demerit section. I will tell you what are the issues with them. Then the good thing is that it extends social security and minimum wages to our organized sector and gig workers for the first time. That is a very good steps. Then it is a step for the women empowerment, because it allows women to work 24/7 in all the industries. Then the flexibility in hiring and firing that is being given to all the especially those companies where there are less than 300 workers employed. So they have got the flexibility. So all the small and medium enterprises, they have got the flexibility in hiring and firing. And it is also said that it will make a strong union, because now you have said that your union will exist or negotiate only if it has more than 50% membership. So earlier the unions which were being divided into multiple unions, like 10 20 unions, where obviously when there are 10 and 20 union, there is going to be lack of bargaining power. So with a strong union, it will have more bargaining power. So it has tried to balance the need of industries as well as workers. This is what the government is saying. But obviously labor union people, they are not happy. They are saying that, see, what you have done is that you have simply succumbed to the pressure of the industries sector. Okay, so there are criticism of these labor law reforms as well. What are those criticism? The first thing is that large workforce is exempted. When you are saying that those, I mean, not only hiring and firing, a lot of other labor law requirements, etc., are also not applicable on those industries or companies which have less than 300 employees. So it exempts more than it includes. Next is that a lot of discretion, and also like see, the code on social security, it covers the informal sector, but the other three codes do not cover the informal sector. Okay, so you can say that the three codes do not cover the informal sector, and even the sector which is covered, a wide discretion has been given to central and state government to grant exemption on various grounds, like when there is a need for export, when there is a need for export competitiveness, uh, on such ground in the national interest, state government and central government have been allowed to grant exemptions from these labor laws. This is having a lot of a scope for misuse. And the easy hiring and firing policy will breed job insecurity in the economy. And another lacuna which is being said is because for migrant workers, those workers who are migrating, there is no protection, and these are the workers which are more vulnerable as compared to other workers. And the gig workers have not been, I mean, again, the same problem is there. The gig workers have been covered in code for social security, but they have not been given adequate representation. For example, they are not allowed, uh, they are not allowed to be a part of union. There is no provision for their job security. And one more thing is that the laws allows rules framing by state governments. So one more thing that has happened is that these laws allow a lot of rules to be framed. So a lot of delegated legislation, delegated provisions are there. Rules would be framed by and these rules again will start those problems. In polity, we have seen that delegated legislation has a problem of over-regulation by the bureaucracy. So when there is huge provision of delegated rules making, in that case, those problems will also incur. That there would be over-regulation, and from the back channel Inspector Raj would be introduced. And the next thing is that once there is a lot of regulation by various state government, etc., then the whole purpose of having a uniformity, making it simplified for the businesses, would be lost. Different state will start having different rules, and these regional disparity will start emerging. Okay, and then the universal minimum wage is very low. Whatever be the universal minimum wage, obviously it would be set by, say, keeping those states in mind which are relatively poor, where wages are very less, and industries are invariably in those states where wages are relatively higher. So as such, this is only a having a nominal effect. It will not have any real effect, or rather what it can have is it can lead to a phenomena called labor cheapening, where because of the government policies, labor would be further cheaper. The wages would further go down, rather it is contrary to the purpose for which minimum wages are set. When you set the minimum wages very low, it can lead to even further reduction in wages. So what is the status as of now? The problem here is that a lot of states have not, or even the center has not notified the code, the rules. So first problem is that center has not notified rules under these codes. So unless rules are notified, these laws cannot be implemented. Even the states which were supposed to say, states are also waiting for center. So most of the states have also not notified the rules. Only few states like MP, Gujarat, they have drafted rules, and like none of the states have drafted rules for all the codes. They are also like doing, like even Rajasthan has drafted the codes for, say, code on security, code on social security. So states are doing something, some states, but they are doing it still on the pilot basis, on the piecemeal basis. A comprehensively adoption of these codes are still to yet to take place. Okay, even like digital labor platforms like web-based inspection, we have said, we have grievance redressal portal under this, we have Shram Dhan portal. Okay, so digital web platforms have been prepared. This readiness is there, but they are also witnessing some logistical issues. So the platforms are ready, but they are still a work in progress. They are logistical issues that are being faced by these platforms. So what's the way forward? Way forward is something which I have referred to National Commission on Labor. National Commission on Labor says that the separate law should be there for a small scale unit. What we have currently done is we have simply waived the compliance for the small scale unit. The Commission on Labor says that you should have separate law, simplified law, but you should not simply waive the small units. Okay, and then there's another suggestion is that there should be a system of labor courts, lok adalat, and labor relation commission as integrated judicial mechanism to deal with labor related issues. Currently, like this is not prevalent everywhere. So to deal with the labor related issues also, you should have a dedicated integrated judiciary, so that whenever labor rights are violated, labor can approach there for grievance redressal and speedy justice is there. Now currently see, delayed justice is not in the interest of either labor or employer. Next is the suggestion is provision for workers in the organized sector to form unions. As of now, the union cannot be formed by workers who are working in unorganized sector. And then we should have some mechanism for universal social security. See, first three are the recommendation of National Commission on Labor. Fourth is the recommendation by Parliamentary Committee. That may be through an act of Parliament, we should provide universal social security. And ILO has a recommendation that there should be restriction on the use of fixed term and ad hoc contract workers in total workforce. Okay, so there is one idea that whatever is the core employment, core work of a organization, that should not be given to fixed term employed or contract worker. But well, this is again a disputed thing. ILO has given a recommendation, that's why we are writing it, but how to implement it is going to be a difficult challenge. The industries may not find it because industries are often involved in cost cutting through these methods. So again, the suggestions we can write. Next, very briefly, I am going to cover you the skill development. A skill development is something like we have covered in the last class. In this class also, there are certain data that you should be aware that in the last class I have told you that only 5% of total employees, sorry, total workforce is formally skilled in India. Okay, whereas the status, for example, in USA the number is at 52%. In South Korea the number is at 96%. So you can see that it is possible that majority of your workforce is formally skilled. Formally skilled means, for example, in India, a lot many people get to know like the masons, etc., plumbers, etc. They learn plumbing, do not from any institute, rather from where they do they learn? Because their father were also working, because they were working with someone, and on site they have learned something. Well, the high quality plumbing, or like this is something that we have faced here, that a lot of Indian workers went to Israel when like the war started between Israel and Palestine. Indian workers went to Israel, were sent there, but they were found lacking in the requisite skills because they were not formally skilled. Although the workers who were sent to Israel, they were all those who have formally skilled. So even formal skill, the skill being provided is not of good quality. In fact, it is said that only around 51% or only around 50.3% of graduates are employable in our country. This is as per the skill report 2023. So even those who are educated, they are not employable. The quality of education is also poor, but the people who are formally skilled are also very less. So this is a huge problem for our country, because those who are, if a skill is not there, then high quality jobs will not be there. The companies will not shift here, so it will also be a problem for FDI. The foreign companies enter India only because they find here cheap labor. But if the cheap labor is not skilled, is not having the competency to do their work, it will be of no use. Next is that Government of India is aware of this. The Government of India has also set up certain targets in the Skill India Mission, National Skill Development Mission. We have the target to provide a skill to 400 million people. 400 million people should be provided a skill. It also includes something called recognition of prior learning. So those who have learned earlier, if like they passed particular test, if they have those skills, etc., they can be recognized that they are skilled. Because see, if you do not have the formal skill, you cannot apply in the formal sector jobs. So if you cannot apply the formal sector job, your wages would always be less, even though you are having the skills. So you cannot rise in the hierarchy. So these are the problems that people are facing. That's why the government has said that there should be formal skill level should increase, and the target the government has set is that 15% of the workforce must be formally skilled. The target for government is that 15% formally skilled workforce we should have. And the third target is that 50,000 youth should be skilled through a skill impact bond between 2021 and 25. Okay, in fact, the government's agenda is to make India a skill capital of the world. Obviously, we have the largest workforce available here. We have the demographic dividend, and that demographic dividend can only be reaped if our youth is skilled. So that's why there is a need. I mean, India has the potential to develop itself in a skill capital, but for that, first we would have to provide formal skill. Second, we would have to provide them quality skill. Okay, and see, well, it is not be enough that if we provide a skill capital of, as in India, but we should also have inclusivity. Like when we are providing a skills, both gender should get a skill. Like labor force participation rate of women is very less. At the same time, all the regions should get benefit. It should not happen that only prosperous regions of the country they are getting a skilled population, and the regions which are rich in labor force they are not getting a skills. Okay, so that's all that I'm going to cover in this lecture. In tomorrow's lecture, we are going to come with the next set of topics with respect to economy. How did you like this lecture? Do tell me in the comment section. And if you have any suggestion, if you have any doubt, you must put in the comment section. I read all the comments put by the students and I will reply to them as well. Okay, see you tomorrow 2 p.m.